I am 81 years old, and there is a particular mistake I have carried with me so long it feels as though it has its own heartbeat. It is not a grand misdeed, it is a slow, ordinary error of judgment. I treated time like a cupboard you could always open later and find what you needed. I'm telling you this because my days are shorter now, and because regret has a way of settling until it becomes the most honest thing left to say. I notice time differently these days. Minutes are not anonymous, they have edges. I know the shape of my mornings: tea at 7, the radiator clicking, the radio soft in the other room, and I know the smallness of my calendar. The doctor's appointments are penciled in and take up an outsized slice of the week. There are things I can do now that I could not do before, and there are things I cannot undo. Saying that aloud is not a plea, it is an account. When I was younger, 20s through 40s, the world felt manageable in the way of someone who believes systems are permanent. I worked as a secretary at a small engineering firm. My days were full of stamped envelopes, typed memos, and the ritual of making coffee at 9 because that's when everyone else did. I kept meticulous notes on ledgers, and I liked the assurance of numbers that balanced. There was a man I married when I was 29. He was practical, steady in the way a tool is steady. We patched a roof together, painted the baby's room ourselves, argued in low voices about the cost of things. None of it seemed exceptional. It was what normal looked like. The decisions I made then were reasonable in the moment. Overtime meant a cushion for emergencies. Taking on a second shift was a sensible answer to a bill that came due. I remember thinking that if I leaned in harder now, later would be easier. Later could be a plan: more savings, a paid-off mortgage, a holiday put off until the kids were grown. I did not see that later is porous, it leaks. You hear the phrase, "we'll do it later," said in kitchens, in cars waiting for school pickup, at the bedside of an aging parent. It sounds harmless. It sounds like prudence. It was how we preserved what felt urgent at the moment. Small things slipped away under the auspices of practicality. Birthdays became cards sent on the next available weekend. My daughter, Anna, would call and we'd talk about schoolwork or a test, and I would let the conversation end because there was paperwork to file. I remember one winter afternoon when I chose to finish a budget instead of taking her to a school play. It wasn't dramatic, I was not callous. I told myself I would make it up. She grew up making her own small consolations. That's the way life rearranges itself. Adaptation becomes habit. There were other small bends in my life that shaped the direction I would later lament. I said yes to promotion more than I said yes to rest. I learned to be proud of being useful and available to my employer. There was a kind of approval in being indispensable. The boss would nod when I stayed late. Coworkers would ask for help because they trusted me. The habits became a kind of identity. I did not notice how much of myself I ceded to that identity because it felt sensible and because no one clapped for ordinary presence at home the way they praised punctual reports and clean invoices. Loss did not arrive as a single blow. It arrived as attrition. They were missed dinners, deferred conversations, holidays that shrank by degrees. I missed a phone call with Anna once because I was in a meeting. I promised to call back and filed it away. That was how neglect looked. Not malicious, not even thoughtless, just practical decisions piled on practical decisions until a distance had its own gravity. Regret, when it came, did not roar. It seeped. The moment of irreversibility, the thing that clarified everything, came in a way that was simple and uncompromising. My husband had a stroke on a Tuesday at work. The call came through the office and my hands fumbled with the receiver. I drove too fast and sat in a hospital waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and coffee. He lingered for a week, and then he did not. It was a clean, blunt ending. There was no second chance to practice the small attentions I had postponed. When he died, clarity arrived with the same quiet that had characterized our lives. Sitting by his bedside, I realized how many of the tiny conversations we'd never had were now impossible. There would be no more evenings listening to him untangle a memory. There would be no more mornings with the clatter of his boots. The small domestic intimacies, the joke about a neighbor's mispronounced name, the private commentary on a film, were gone in a way that photographs on a mantle cannot bring back. Once a person is gone, the possibility of another ordinary day with them is also gone, and that knowledge weighs differently than grief itself. What is permanently lost is not only a person, it is the opportunity to be the person who is there in the small ways that constitute being remembered. You cannot gather missed phone calls and sew them into a conversation. You cannot retrieve a hand on your shoulder missed because there was work to finish. There are lists, books, photos, a drawer of letters that serve as records, but they are records, not substitutes. Time once spent cannot be reclaimed. It is a point I am saying plainly, without flourish, because it is true and because I wish someone had insisted on its plainness while I still thought I had reserve. The accumulation of small losses led to strange phenomena. People you thought would be constants become acquaintances you see at family events. Friends decline invitations because their own lives have found their own shapes. My daughter, Anna, is kind and she calls, but her voice carries different textures now. There are grandchildren, a job, a distance that has its own momentum. I have moments when I realize I am less remembered than I imagined. Parties are smaller, the phone is quieter. I do not dramatize this, I note it. It feels like a dimming light, not an outage. There is gratitude in this life, even in the presence of sorrow. I am grateful for the neighbor who brings soup when the rains come and for the woman at the library who remembers my name. I am grateful for mornings where the light slants in just so on the kitchen table. Gratitude laces through my days like a thin thread you cannot see until you pull it and something soft yields. I am not trying to balance grief with positivity. I am simply admitting that the contours of my life include both softness and ache. If I am speaking to you now, it is not to lecture. I cannot bear the sound of preaching. I want only to tell you what I wish I had known plainly, as if I were telling it to a neighbor over the fence. First, do not mistake busyness for meaning. You can be occupied and still empty. Work and production can give you an identity, but they also make it easy to misplace an ordinary human presence that is not rewarded with trophies. I thought a filled ledger equaled a filled life. It did not. Second, keep the small conversations. When someone begins to tell you something minor, a story about a coworker, a complaint about a cold shoulder, lean in. Learn the shape of their daily walks, the names of their friends, the recipes they guard. Those details are where real attachment lives. They are the scaffolding that remains when everything else is reduced. Third, make practical things accessible. It is unromantic, but my daughter once had to grape through a stack of papers at my kitchen table to find a phone number. I had kept little lists for myself that no one else could decipher. Make a place where someone else can find the keys to the house, the numbers of doctors, where important papers live. It is not courage to be mysterious about these things. It is selfishness by accident. Fourth, resist waiting for the perfect time. I kept thinking the right moment would arrive without me needing to force it. There is no perfect time. There will be interruptions, bills, deadlines, reasons why one more day is more reasonable. Those reasons are often valid. I am not saying throw all caution to the wind. I am saying notice when later becomes the default and choose sometimes to be present now. Fifth, practice small admissions. I wish I had said more, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I saw you, I loved that about you. I watched people walk away from conversations because they did not know how to be honest in small ways. Honesty is not a parade of speeches. It is saying a single plain sentence at the right time. I could frame these as instructions, but I do not wish to command. They are confessions of what I failed to do. They are small truths I would have liked someone to hand me like a packet of seeds and say, plant these now. I am not offering a cure. I am offering what I would have appreciated, a blunt accounting, without varnish. Living now, I am learning to do some things differently, though it is late. I have started to keep lists that anyone can follow. I answer the phone more often. I accept offers of help with a strange relief. It is humbling and necessary. I allow a neighbor to come in and fix a leaky tap rather than insisting I can do it alone. These are small concessions, and they ease the days. They do not erase what I missed, but they make the remaining time less knotted. There is a limitedness in my voice now. My breathing is shallower, and I am aware of appointments and a calendar that seems to shrink each year. Saying these things is an admission of mortality, not a plea for pity. It is a practical confession. Here is what my life looks like now, and here is the record of the things I wish I had noticed sooner. I say this without drama, because the truth is small and persistent. I do not imagine a world fixed by any one decision. I only know what has happened to mine. There are doors closed now that will not open. There are evenings where the television flickers and the house breathes around me in steadier rhythms. There is the drawer of photographs I pull from sometimes, and the recipes with a margin in his handwriting I read at odd moments. These things are all I have to show for a life lived partly in things and partly in absence. I am not lonely in the sense of being abandoned. I am lonely in the sense that certain intimacies have been used up and cannot be replenished. It is a quiet loneliness. It is not stormy. It is a room that holds its own echoes. I accept it because what else is left to do but accept? Acceptance is not lightness. It is a settling into the fact of things. There is time enough still for small corrections, and there is not. It depends on many things beyond my voice. I will say one last thing plainly. Notice the ordinary. That is the only thing I can offer without presumption. Notice it and act when you can. Make fewer assumptions about later. I will finish because my throat is tired and because there are a few things left to put away. I will fold laundry, wipe the table, and put the kettle on. I will write a note on a scrap of paper with a number that someone could find if they needed to. These are not heroic acts. They are the quiet, practical acts of someone who has learned how small things hold the weight of a life. Goodbye is too grand a word. It feels more accurate to say I am going to sit a while and remember, and that I will keep, as best I can, the ordinary things that remain.